Welcome to Primetime Mitch, everybody, and today I'm going to be running down my scariest scenes in non-horror movies. Ever watched a movie and it's been pleasant and interesting and intriguing, and then suddenly it's hit you with a scene that you cannot get out of your head for days on end? Somebody will say, you remember that movie? Oh yeah, I liked it, but that bit, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I've managed to grab 15 together to bring to you today. Anything else you can think of or something that immediately springs to mind that I have left out of this list, please put it in the comments below and tell me about it. In addition to liking, subscribing and sharing this channel. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for the amount of subscribers I've had in my 4 months of doing this. So let's get going. Here's my fears. Number 15 is relatively small, but I remember at the time feeling very creeped out by it. And it is from Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. What could be creepy about this movie? This joyful, festive jape. I'll tell you what, alone at night in New York, when Kevin is walking through the streets of New York at night and he encounters the scariest of night dwellers in New York, the insane woman muttering to him, the prostitutes on the side of the road, it filled me with a horrible sense of being trapped in the asylum kind of thing. And then it is topped off by when he gets in the cab and the cab driver turns around and says,
"Ain't much better in here, kid."
Yeah, I really felt for him in that situation. I guess I put myself in his position, which I often do with movies, and I just imagine being a young kid surrounded by all this horrific stuff, and it's always amplified as a child. Things look a lot worse and a lot scarier when you're younger. Coming in at number 14 is a 2002 one-hour photo starring Robin Williams. And though this movie is kind of creepy throughout and Cy Parrish's actions are somewhat questionable, you do feel a sympathy. It is very much sort of a chilling drama, but not too much in the way of scares, until suddenly out of nowhere, Cy's dream sequence has his eyes exploding with blood. It's one jump scare in the middle of a movie that doesn't really do that. It's not a horror, it's sort of a psychological thriller, but yeah, that put the creeps up me. Number 13, Toy Story. Those toys, man. I mean, after a while you kind of get used to it. I think it's initially when they appear, and particularly the spider baby, I felt very uneasy when that happened. Obviously after a while you sort of see that they help, they do good things and they fight back against Sid, but the initial unveiling of them walking out of the shadows and they're all these deformed, mutated things that this sick kid has created, it's quite creepy and quite weird for a children's movie. So I remember, I'm going off my initial reactions. Now I watch it and I just find entertainment in it. Back then I was like, ugh. Number 12 is 1991's Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Now I'm pretty sure there's a few of you thinking, this isn't a jump scare, this isn't something that, it's not creepy imagery, it is just a frightening situation. And the reason I put it in this list is because it haunted me when I was a kid. My mother had it on and I sat on the floor and just sort of casually watched it with her, you know, at the age of 7 years old, I think. It has a lovely vibe about the movie, it's very charming, very Steel Magnolias, but it is the scene when Buddy, played by Chris O'Donnell in an early role, is frolicking on the train tracks with his girlfriend and he gets his foot caught in the tracks and he cannot undo his shoe in time and the train is coming towards him and it eventually kills him. It's a terrifying thought to be stuck in that position and not being able to move and just watching your fate about to happen. Watch it, it's tragic. Number 11, the incomparable Jurassic Park from 1993. A Spielberg triumph and a movie that is filled with action and some scary scenes as a child, but almost more adrenaline and more excitement. But there's one scene in particular that I always used to feel really on edge about, and I think everybody knows what that would be, and it's the T-Rex coming out of the compound while they are trapped in the car. that lovely setup with the ripples on the glass of water. Lex and Tim trapped in the car. Ariana Richards' facial expressions throughout this are just one of pure terror. And you know, when you think about it, if you're just on a maximum security safari like that, and then that happens, yeah, screw that. So I really, really like that scene for tension and for fear. I'm pretty sure that scene deserves a place in this list. And I remember watching it as a kid, and I was so glad to be sat on my sofa instead of being in that car at that particular moment. In at number 10 is going to be Who Framed Roger Rabbit? 1988 fantasy comedy, an absolute groundbreaker in my opinion. A really, really great memory from my childhood, but I do remember being terrified by two particular moments. Number one, Eddie sees the silhouette of Jessica and obviously believes it to be Jessica Rabbit. When the hair drops from the face, it's Lena f***ing Hyena. Maniacally running at him, lips puckering, hated that, couldn't stand that scene. It's almost like reminiscent of the older Rugrats scene when Tommy's face turns all deranged when he spins around. I hated that scene. And then of course the Judge Doom moment at the end when he is revealed and his eyes pop out. I actually didn't find that bit quite as scary as him actually getting run over by the steamroller, which I thought was the most hellish thing I'd ever seen as a kid. So those two moments at different points in the movie were pretty scary for me as a kid, but I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's an absolutely brilliant production. Coming in at number 9 is The Witches. Who likes that, really? Amazing effects, fantastic makeup, just such a dark turn, and a lot of Roald Dahl's novels had a lot of darkness in them, and this movie really, really brings out the darkest of the dark for me. None of the women in the crowd look particularly great when they take off all their glamour, but Angelica Houston, I did not expect that. The Grand Witch to look so much worse than the rest of them. It's a real shocker, and honestly, I do remember when I was a kid sort of covering my eyes a little bit. I'm pretty sure I showed my son that when he was younger, and he was the same. So yeah, I think that's a deserved place on the list. Now in at number 8, a lot of these have been kids movies up to now, and the worst one of those I'm going to leave till a little bit later. But this one's a bit more serious, and that's Trainspotting, The Ceiling Baby. I am not a fan of this movie. I appreciate what it did, and I appreciate the raw, visceral nature of it. And I am one for kitchen sink dramas as well, so these kind of movies I tend to lean towards. But this one just had nothing about it that made me feel remotely good. I felt dirty after watching it, and I like the second one more. I thought the second one was better structured, and I don't really take anything from the first one other than that god-awful cot death scene. But that is sort of eclipsed in terms of terror by the hallucination of it crawling on the ceiling and its head turning round. Ewan McGregor's character screaming at it in pure horror. That to me is the one thing I take away from that movie, and thankfully I'll probably never ever see it again because I don't really want to watch the first Trainspotting ever again. But that is it's a definite horror moment in a non-horror. Number 7 is one of 2 David Lynch entries in this list, and that is The Lost Highway, a 1997 mystery thriller with Bill Pullman and Patricia Arquette. Such a bizarre movie, one I'm planning on watching again soon and doing a sole review on. But there is the moment with the mystery man which stands out a mile because of how random it is and how creepy it is, and it's just so generally unsettling. From what I recall, again, I will rewatch it, but there isn't a whole lot of connection between that scene and everything else. It just happens.
As a matter of fact, I'm there right now.
What do you mean you're where right now?
At your house.
His eyes not blinking, staring maniacally at him, right into his eyes, and then the laugh at the end of it. It's that out of place, something's not right feeling, and obviously for the rest of the movie there's no other mention of it. It's very weird, but that really sticks with you. Robert Blake, man, Number 6 is a second David Lynch entry in this list, and that is Holland Drive, the surrealist 2001 mystery thriller from David Lynch. Very, very typical work from him, and this movie is a cluster of bizarre, dreamlike sequences, but there is one in particular which everybody knows.
There's a man in back of this place. He's the one who's doing it. I can see him through the wall. I can see his face. I hope that I never see that face ever outside of a dream.
The guy in the diner talking about a nightmare he'd had where he encounters a horrific figure behind that very diner, and when they go to investigate, there he is, and just the shock of it. I don't know why that scene is as scary as it is, but I think it's all to do with the build-up. It's to do with the sound. There's almost like a lull throughout where you're almost in his head. Yeah, that's always an entry in these kind of lists. I think you have to watch it to appreciate it. Number 5, Terminator 2, the nuclear bomb scene. You could argue that there is a horror element to Terminator in general. It is predominantly action and sci-fi, but this scene when the nuclear bomb hits and you get that vaporizing of Sarah, and the playground setting as well makes it all the more unpleasant and tragic. I think there is a lot of horror in Terminator, but I think it never more so is shown than this particular scene. Number 4, Return to Oz. The Wheelers. Not the only creepy imagery in this movie by any stretch. It's certainly got a horror crust on this movie, but the introduction of the Wheelers is without doubt a moment that sends the hairs vertical on the arms.
Come here, chicken!
The masks that they wear are so deathly and soulless, and just the unnatural movement of their limbs while they're rolling into shot. It's just, yeah, for any kid, I can imagine that is terrifying. And I don't know whether to include this as a kid's movie entry, because personally, I think this was for young adults at the very least. Coming in at number 3, it's a children's movie, it's a musical, but again, you know, when you look at these old musicals, they always kind of have a bit of an unsettling feel to them, and that is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but more specifically, The Boat Ride from Hell. What they were thinking here, I do not know. I mean, I can't remember the book as much. I need to read it again. I think last time I read the book, I was about 12, but I don't know how Roald Dahl depicted this scene, if at all. I know he didn't really like this production of it. The imagery on the walls, the chicken getting its head cut off, the millipede, it was just nasty, and all the while Gene Wilder is going absolutely batshit crazy. Reciting that song, and they're supposed to be there for a happy day, and it turns into a living nightmare in that boat, and then boom, it stops. It's a fantastic scene, but God, it put the creeps up me when I was a kid. Number 2, could be number 1 in many's list, The Child Catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. What was that all about? I mean, it's bad enough that he is what he is, but to have the long nose, the beady eyes, just... it's a nightmare. It's a living nightmare in a film that is about a car with a personality. If you remember Herbie and movies like that, that's what this should have been about. Not some creepy ass old long nosed deviant stealing children.
Inside my little ears!
I always thought The Pied Piper was a terrifying story as it is, but that pretty much is it, just in very unpleasant form. Nah, screw The Child Catcher. I never want to see that ever again. And number 1 is probably the greatest dupe in movie history. If you thought that Watership Down was a movie about happy fluffy bunny rabbits in a world of love and peace and harmony. My God, we were all played. We all thought that. I still to this day can't believe just how strong they went with that. The Bright Eyes theme becomes a nightmare. It's just tinged with tragedy all the way through it. And of course, the scene that everyone knows with the burrow being filled in. I mean, I don't know what Watership Down is classed as anymore. It's not really a children's film, I don't think. I think it's something you watch if you're disturbed, personally.
You see, the air to the bad runs blocked with dead bodies.
Animal lovers hate it. Certainly my generation grew up with it. We got it shown to us in school. I think this was the teachers just trying to brighten their own miserable days. I don't know, but yeah, to me, as a non-horror, because it technically isn't, Watership Down for me takes the trophy for the most frightening non-horror movie of all time. It should not have been what it was, and it really was. That's my list, guys. I've got 15 of them. You probably have a few that I've not mentioned, or maybe you want me to see. So sometime in the future, if I ever want to redo this video, I can put a few more entries on, maybe do a top 20. Tell me what scared you in a non-horror movie. Leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please smash a like and a subscribe. Drop your comments below, and I will see you very soon for some more content down the line.